Truth is, I am Iron Man.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
What is going on? What are you doing?
To infinity and beyond!
This is the way.
The flux capacitor.
Was Star Wars the one with the little wizard boy?
Chewie, we're home.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
Hello, fans, to United We Fan, the podcast. United with me is my co-host, the nerdy Bryan. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, everyone.
We hope our fellow fans enjoyed last week's episode where we took the field to discuss baseball films. On this week's episode, we head to Gotham City to discuss The Dark Knight Trilogy. Fan thank yous. Nathan, Mr. Dr. Pepper, he gave us a shout out for our Harry Potter episode. He was quite the fan of it that midway through he had to stop and listen to the audiobooks. He was just so inspired by us. So thank you for that. If you have any more fan thank yous, feel free to hit us up. We love hearing it and reading them. In Mark and Brian's World News, I was blessed that they decided to release more of the Target Blacklight Marvel Funkos. And I got my favorite, Mr. Captain America. And I was even able to snag my friend a Thor one. So I felt pretty special, but of course they're all gone again. And then let's see, Bryan and I, we talked about the Umbrella Academy on the last episode, and we both finished it. Bryan, any thoughts? Was it better than season one?
Yeah, it was better than season one. I just think some of the stuff that they paid off from season one definitely isn't quote unquote answered, but there's still a lot to come. People are still not sure that there's a season three, but I can tell you that there is way too much to pay off if there's not a season three. I think a lot of people will be disappointed.
I agree. I think there has to be a season three. The show is too popular. The fandom is just really strong with it. I know I'll probably be in the minority, but I liked season one more. It just gripped me a lot better. For me, a lot more memorable parts. But I think season two definitely took a deeper turn, and I think everyone should definitely watch it. I was entertained. Disney made some waves with a decision when it came to Mulan. Bryan, you know what? I'll let you take this one. What did Disney do with Mulan?
Yeah, I could talk about this forever, so I won't. So, Mark, you'll need to keep me in check on here. But the long and short of it is Disney has made the decision. Now, they're calling it a one-off with Mulan only. I don't believe that even a little bit. On Labor Day weekend, they're releasing Mulan on what's called Premier Access Disney Plus, where it's basically premium video on demand. If you think about movies that have come out since the coronavirus came along, like Trolls World Tour or Scoob or something like that, where you pay $20 for a 48-hour rental of that movie. Instead, Disney's doing Premier Access through Disney Plus, where you pay $30 for Mulan, but you don't have it just for 48 hours. You have it for the length that you keep your Disney Plus subscription. So when you think about it, the $30 price tag is a little bit steep, but especially for a family of five like me, Mulan was definitely going to be a movie we were going to go see in theaters. That would have cost me at least $25 if I went on a $5 Tuesday, but it would have cost me anywhere from $45 to $65 to go see it if I wanted to go see it on a Dolby or an IMAX. So $30 I'm getting off pretty cheap. Now, I don't want movie theaters to be replaced altogether, but the way Disney's doing it is $30. You have access to it as long as you keep your Disney Plus subscription. I'm excited about it because I don't think movie theaters are going to be a viable option for a long time. I'm really hoping they do something similar with Black Widow. Now, on the earnings call, Disney CEO Bob Chapek did say it was a one-off, but there's also an investor day that they're going to be hosting that's going to talk about the future of their business. And the last investor day they had was completely introducing Disney Plus. So I do expect that investor day to focus on new ways that Disney's going to move along without movie theaters, or at least a reduction in movie theaters being part of what they do.
As someone who loves movie theaters, I hope this is a one-off. I know Disney says it is, but I think it's more, hey, we're going to test the waters to see financially how this does. Now, as a moviegoer, I don't like it simply because Mulan is a movie that is meant to be seen in theaters. It's going to be epic. It's going to be huge. Before Disney started getting really heavy into the live actions, I was like, where's my live action Mulan? I feel it should have come out way before Dumbo, way before the shot-for-shot remake of Lion King. So I was excited for it. To get it on home viewing, I understand these are hard times. Business-wise, I understand. Movie experience-wise, I don't think it's going to compete. And then for $30, I was not too happy when I heard the price tag. But then when they said unlimited viewing, I was like, okay. But honestly, I might wait for them to just release it on like Movies Anywhere to purchase or wherever. And unless they include Disney Plus exclusive special features, then you can talk me into it. But I'm not quite sure what I'll do yet. Business wise, Disney, I understand. Movie theater lover in me, I'm kind of still grumpy cat about it.
If we're ranking the choices, choice 1 is getting to see it in a movie theater. Choice 2 for me is getting to see it at home. Choice 3 is the company sits on it.
Yeah.
And that's not really much of an option either, because even if movie theaters do go back to how they were,
Yeah.
I just don't see Disney's going to have so many movies coming out in 2021 that they're going to have
Right.
overlap with each other. I just don't think holding on to it really is that much of a viable option anymore. So I'm excited about the prospects of it, and the sooner I can see Black Widow, the better.
I will actually probably be really irked if they do it with Black Widow. I think that's another movie theater experience. Honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if they had chose to do it with Jungle Cruise with The Rock. I love The Rock. I love Emily Blunt, but the movie kind of looks like a Journey to the Center of the Earth or Jumanji. I wouldn't have been upset if they had released that on Disney Plus and kept Mulan and Black Widow for theaters, but what do I know? In Mark and Brian's World Polls, where we take a look at our social media polls, my current one is finding out what everyone's favorite Adam Sandler movie is.
Shut up!
So far, not too many surprises. I have been shocked at the pushback I've gotten for You Don't Mess with Zohan. Not doing so well. Those are some very passionate fans, the 5 that there are. Brian, do you have a favorite Adam Sandler movie?
For me, this is going to come down to Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. But the way you put some of these matchups together, Mark, I feel like you might put them just up against each other in round 2 just to mess with me.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
No, I won't do that. Not intentionally. For me, I still think The Wedding Singer is my favorite.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
8 Crazy Nights. I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure, but during the holiday season, I always end up watching 8 Crazy Nights. And let's see, Brian, your recent Mount Rushmore was favorite MCU villain. I'm not gonna lie, I had to go and Google all of them. I gave it a Google, and there were quite a bit. Ones that I forgot about, ones I was like, oh yeah, that one. Mine ended up being Loki from so many, like mainly Thor.
He's my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Killmonger from Black Panther. I think he was robbed of a supporting actor nod. Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal from Far From Home. I think he's actually one of the few good parts about that movie. And then Thanos.
Whoa.
What?
Did you just disparage Far From Home?
I don't think it holds up as well just because of the awkward romance in there. I love the Mysterio scenes, but yeah, it has not held up as well for me.
All right.
Not making my cut, just missing it is Red Skull, Ultron, and Winter Soldier.
I had a hard time with somebody like Winter Soldier or Wanda Maximoff, just because they're no longer villains. And I guess you could play that same role with Loki. Like, is he still a villain? I mean, probably the way he was in Ragnarok, maybe not as much. But I think the Loki we're going to get that jumped from Avengers Endgame to the Loki series that we're going to get on Disney Plus is definitely going to be a villain. My 4 were Thanos, who is literally my kid's version of Darth Vader. Like, he is this generation's movie villain. Mysterio I had as well, but we need to talk about Far From Home another time because that really caught me off guard. I must have a thing for Spider-Man villains because Vulture, Michael Keaton's Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming.
So good.
Just the entire surprise they pull off of Peter picking Liz up from the house and her being Liz's dad and that car, that scene in the car on the way to prom or on the way to the homecoming dance is so just powerful. Just the emotions.
I bet you're glad when your old pal Spider-Man showed up in the elevator, though. Good old Spider-Man.
And then Loki, of course. Some of the big call-outs of ones that were left off was especially Eric Killmonger Stevens from Black Panther. Michael B. Jordan's character, he's a super good villain. I just didn't have room for him. Four is not enough. One more villain I want to call out that I really wish had made my list was Hela from Thor Ragnarok. Just Kate Blanchett's character. She's really, really convincing. She's really good. I like that character.
I had such a nerd boy crush when that preview first came out. I already have a crush on Kate Blanchett. And then when I just saw her as the villain, fanboy feels all over. Yeah. Sorry to blow your mind with Mysterio and Far From Home. Well, maybe, who knows? Well, I feel like this has to be an episode where we talk about our favorite MCU villains, and maybe we can dive deeper into that, or just do a new Spider-Man podcast on that.
He was a great villain. Credit to you for at least being able to put one of your favorite villains from a movie you don't care about as much. So good on you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, God, I like to see it. Now it's time to turn on the bat signal as we talk about Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Trilogy. Joker, take it away.
And here we go.
I feel like it's best we start with ranking the trilogy so that you know how Bryan and I see them. So there's only 3 of them, so this will be pretty easy.
Yeah, this was actually really easy for me. The Dark Knight is not only my favorite of this trilogy, but in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Second for me would be Batman Begins. And then pretty far down the list, actually, is going to be The Dark Knight Rises.
We are on the same page. Dark Knight is easily my number 1. But I will say this, when I went back to rewatch Batman Begins for this episode, it went higher in stock for me. It's not that I didn't have like great feelings about it, but I actually really enjoyed it after having not watched it in a long time. Dark Knight Rises, when I first saw it, really didn't like it. Now I'm good with it, but it's easily the bottom of the 3 for me. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, though, is only one of 3 trilogies to be on IMDb's top 200. We'll get to where they rank once we start talking about the films. But, Bryan, can you guess the other 2 trilogies that are making the list?
I know for a fact that the Lord of the Rings trilogy has to be on there. The original 3 Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy has to be one of them.
Correct.
And the only other one that belongs is the original trilogy from Star Wars.
That's correct. Yep. So if you're wondering what IMDb users think the top 3 trilogies are, it's the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, Star Wars, the original trilogy, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Bryan, any thoughts on that? You think all 3 trilogies belong, or?
I don't, actually. And I think the one that doesn't belong is the one we're actually discussing. The Dark Knight Rises, I'm shocked it's rated as high as it is, especially above Batman Begins on that list. I'm pretty surprised by that.
Yeah, Dark Knight Rises is so much higher than Batman Begins. But if you were to tell me that you don't think there's 250 movies that are better than The Dark Knight Rises, I would love to have a friendly chat with you on that. But I agree. The Dark Knight trilogy, not to take away from it, it is very well done. But does it belong? All 3? I don't agree with that. Well, we'll begin where Batman begins. Ranking at 130 on IMDb's top 200. This was a reboot after Warner Brothers needed to take a break from Batman after Batman and Robin, which I will admit is a guilty pleasure that I will happily watch. Batman Begins, I think, was a game changer. I believe Marvel was inspired the direction to take their Marvel Cinematic Universe. Batman Begins played a part in it. And Christopher Nolan even inspired the James Bond franchise to reboot and be maybe a grittier, darker, more realistic tone when they did Casino Royale. Had a huge impact on, and it was a game changer.
Batman Begins did a lot of really good things. One of the things they did not do well for me, though, was spoiling Liam Neeson being Ra's al Ghul fairly early on in the proceedings of making this movie. I remember knowing from when I learned about the film that Ra's al Ghul was going to be not who we thought it was originally, and it was pretty easy to kind of put those two things together. But the Batcave in this movie, I love the Batcave. Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne is really good, and in my opinion, Mark, the greatest Alfred we've ever gotten in Michael Caine.
I don't even know if I can argue with that. I will admit I did like Alfred from the Tim Burton movies. I did enjoy that Alfred for that storyline. I think Jeremy Irons didn't really get a chance to show us what he could do with Alfred. So I won't argue with that, having Sir Michael Caine as Alfred as the best Alfred.
I think it's Michael Goff that played the original Alfred that you're talking about.
I think it's just nostalgia. He was my introduction to Alfred, so I think just the nostalgia is holding on to that for me.
I just think Michael Caine, the way he carries himself and just how much command he has of any room that he's in, he's very well respected. But getting this introduction of Batman wanting to, just the way they play out his past life of wanting to kill the man who killed Martha and Thomas Wayne, the way they introduce the criminal underground, they do a really good job at building up Gotham City to being just as bad as you're supposed to believe Gotham City is.
I remember this when the movie came out. Everyone was like, wait a minute, the Joker didn't kill Batman's parents? And I just kept thinking, wow, a lot of people have seen the Tim Burton movie. So I was happy that the movie kind of set things a little more comic book. I didn't remember this aspect of it, but the movie actually plays on just how scary Batman is. When you're in that shipyard and people are disappearing and the guy gets pulled into the container and he's showing up out of nowhere, they actually played in there that Batman is meant to be a little scary and intimidating, not just bright colors and bat nipples. He's there to intimidate and scare the criminals.
He's Batman. Like, just what they did and the fact that they cast a little kid as little Bruce Wayne, as hard as it would be, and my dad's name is Bruce, so I feel like I'm allowed to say this, of calling a 10-year-old kid Bruce would be kind of difficult to do. But I think they cast a little kid that looked a lot like Christian Bale. I think they did a good job there. I'm more partial to the Katie Holmes version of Rachel Dawes than I am the Maggie Gyllenhaal version.
This is going to be a long topic right here.
Go ahead.
All right. So I remember when Katie Holmes first did it, I was like, oh, man, I don't know about this casting. And I heard names like Sarah Michelle Gellar she was considered. And then I heard Rachel McAdams. And I love Rachel McAdams. I think she's a great actress. I would have loved to have seen what she would have done with it. And then when Katie Holmes passed on The Dark Knight, Rachel McAdams was brought up again, and it went to Maggie Gyllenhaal, who I think is a talented actress, but I don't like her portrayal out of the two. I agree with you. I think Katie Holmes did a better portrayal of the two, but I would have loved to have seen Rachel McAdams in the role. I think she would have owned it.
I really prefer Katie Holmes over Maggie Gyllenhaal. That's just kind of my own personal opinion. But Liam Neeson, as he goes by Ducard originally and then Ra's al Ghul later in the movie, I think he does a really good job in the role of teaching Batman the League of Shadows and all that kind of stuff. How Batman defects from the League of Shadows plays off really well. You don't really question any of the storyline there.
This film has amazing casting. Liam Neeson is always brilliant. Michael Caine, like you brought up earlier. Morgan Freeman, who should just narrate everything in life. Christian Bale, I think he's truly just one of the most amazing actors. Gary Oldman, Cillian Murphy, Tom Wilkinson, Rutger Hauer, Ken Watanabe, who I love. He was in The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise and also Inception. The list goes on and on. You can just tell everyone was excited to do this movie. Bravo to the casting director of this film.
I just think the character development throughout this movie is well done. They do a good job at throwing Bruce Wayne right in your face without having to do too much of why do I believe this guy is going to do the right thing for the city of Gotham. I think the way that they portray Thomas Wayne, you're supposed to take him how his son took him. I don't think you're supposed to take Thomas Wayne at how the entire city viewed him. But they do a decent job at balancing the board's reaction with Bruce's reactions as to how his dad would have done things, and Bruce is just trying to do right by his dad and right by the city. Lucius Fox, the character of Lucius Fox, Morgan Freeman's character. I really enjoy just everything about him. He introduces actually what is probably all around my favorite Batmobile, just from what it can do. Now, obviously, the Michael Keaton Batmobile is prettier to look at and it's more fun on screen, but I love the Tumbler.
Hold up. All right.
I love the Tumbler.
Now I need your Mount Rushmore of theatrical. So Adam West, I love your car, but we're only going to do the theatrical Batmobiles. Give me your Mount Rushmore. Don't give me the whole like, oh, this one's more practical and all that. I want to know Brian's overall favorites.
Michael Keaton for sure.
Okay.
The Tumbler definitely qualifies. I'm having a hard time filling out my Mount Rushmore, Mark. All I can say is that I do not think Robert Pattinson's Batmobile from the image of the Batman that's being filmed will make my top 4. I don't think that that's going to happen.
My Mount Rushmore so far for the theatrical Batmobiles, Michael Keaton's, that's on there. The George Clooney one, I love that Batmobile. I don't know why it gets so much hate. I think it's just, it's part of that movie. Hate it. Meow. I like the Ben Affleck, Batfleck, his Batmobile is on mine. And then, I mean, we don't really have too many more, so I guess it comes down to do I want the Tumbler or the Batman Forever one? I don't feel the same way about the new Robert Pattinson one. I think it looks pretty epic and cool. I'll wait and see it in action footage. Now, younger me loved the Batman Forever toy car, but I guess I'll put the Tumbler fourth. I wasn't too huge on it. It's not my top 3. I think it's really cool. Would I love to ride in it? Yeah. Do I think it's perfect for the movie? Yeah. But I'm not as sold on that Bat car.
Is it a little bit ludicrous that the motorcycle comes out of it? Yeah, but that's okay.
That was fun, though. That was fun. One thing I also liked about the movie, they used a lot of models. And if you get a chance, watch the making of this trilogy and how many scenes you'll be surprised are models. Like, for example, in The Dark Knight, when the Batmobile lifts up the one dump truck, that's all models. The Batmobile on the roof, escaping with Rachel and Batman Begins, models. So I love them for going old school with that. We can't talk about the Christopher Nolan trilogy without talking about Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard's score for the Batman trilogy. Sadly, James Newton Howard felt his services weren't needed for The Dark Knight Rises, and I miss it. Me being the score nerd, I missed his contribution to the third one. But I will say I love the Dark Knight album. I love the Batman Begins album. I've definitely, when I've been in a hurry, I'll put on several tracks from the Batman Begins albums. It's great for driving fast, too. Hans Zimmer, James Newton Howard do a great job of coming up with themes. Now, are the themes more memorable than Danny Elfman's? That's hard to argue against Danny Elfman's themes, but I want to say Batman has some of the best movie scores. Batman Returns, great stuff. Even Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, you had a new composer. He did a great job. And then you had the Dark Knight trilogy. And I even loved the themes that we had for Batman vs. Superman. So bravo to the composers.
I think the score that came out of these, the Batman theme that came out of the Dark Knight ones, is some of the most recognizable superhero music out there. And it's so different. You wouldn't consider it a superhero music if you just heard it. But when you know what it is, it just puts you right back in there. Absolutely.
We talked so much about the Dark Knight and how much we love it. Let's get to it. The Dark Knight is on IMDb's top 10. Not only the top 10, but the top 5. And I remember at one point it was the number 1 for a long time. Not anymore. Brian, you want to guess where it is in the top 5?
Third.
Close. It's going to be number 4. Knowing that it wasn't the number 1 for a long time, I thought it was only going to be like second or third, but it dropped down to 4, which is still great for where it is because those IMDb fans are, well, they're very passionate. I'll just go with that. But now with The Dark Knight, we move on from Scarecrow to the Joker.
Why so serious?
Heath Ledger delivers a worthy Oscar performance, so I'm glad he won for that. And then, of course, later in the film, he is joined by Harvey Two-Face Dent. So overall, I think that's what makes the film just so great is the villain stepped up, and even Christian Bale's performance stepped up in this one.
Having rewatched this movie again fairly recently, it was cool to start the movie again with Scarecrow when Batman's trying to to stop him yet again, and he knows that, hey, this isn't the real Batman, and then he shows up, and just all the copycats and all that kind of stuff. That's a really fun scene. The performance of Heath Ledger as the Joker in this movie obviously stole the show. He won an Academy Award for supporting actor. Just everything he put into the role of the Joker really came across off screen. It's really just a shame that he wasn't able to see it before it premiered.
That was heartbreaking. I wish he could have seen how many fans loved his performance so much and are still cosplaying him, have shirts with him on it, tons of tattoos. Heath Ledger, he's sadly no longer with us, but another one of his performances is going to live on for a very long time. But we're talking about strong performances. Maggie Gyllenhaal, I know I talked about it a little earlier. Her performance doesn't match up with Katie Holmes at all. And I don't know if Christopher Nolan was just like, hey, I don't want you to do something similar. But her character, I feel like, is a different person. And just her performance, kind of, I eye roll it here and there with some of her decisions. So I feel like the film is almost perfect, and she's one of the weaker points to it.
The weakest point, honestly, to me in this movie, I really like the story that they tell with Harvey Dent. But the weakest part of the storyline for me does involve Maggie Gyllenhaal's Rachel Dawes character as well. Is I feel like Harvey Dent was far more of a successful person and of conviction and everything else, that him turning into Two-Face full blown only basically because of the death of Rachel Dawes was a little bit forced for me. I would have loved to see Harvey Dent's story play out, maybe even into the third movie. And it was the way they wrap up the film of turning Batman into the villain so Harvey Dent can remain what they call the White Knight, the hero that everybody's looking for.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I don't know, a little bit more nudge for Harvey Dent for me, which, I mean, sounds a little heartless to say.
I can see where you're coming from. Reading and then watching a lot of the backstory to this, one thing I read was Christopher Nolan had originally planned for Two-Face to be set up in the third one with the Joker being involved, but this one to be mainly about the Joker. That obviously kind of got scrapped because at one point Nolan wasn't sure if he wanted to do a third one. I think just a little bit of the unsureness kind of made them go, you know what, let's have it all in this movie. Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Two-Face, I think he was perfect casting, but that leads me to my other weak point with this film. I personally do not like the CGI face, the Two-Face aspect. I think they could have done great makeup out there with it. I know Christopher Nolan, the genius, said it wouldn't have looked right, so they had to go with CGI. But when I first saw it, all I could think about was The Mummy, when the Mummy's rebuilding from the Brendan Fraser movies. That's all I could think about. So
you went a little nicer than me. I went Mars Attacks.
I can see that too. So, but I think the CGI, I probably wouldn't have gone with that because the film, I feel like, is so not CGI heavy. And then you bring CGI to this very focal point here. It just didn't work for me.
It is a little bit distracting, but just with how much is playing out from the character who's blackmailing Bruce Wayne, basically.
You think that your client, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world, is secretly a vigilante who spends his nights beating criminals to a pulp with his bare hands? And your plan is to blackmail this person? Good luck.
To then getting his life saved, and the Joker's going to blow up Gotham General Hospital, like all that kind of stuff. You're so focused on, especially in that scene where the Joker's convincing Harvey Dent that, hey, life isn't all roses and everything else, and trying to get him to team up with him. You're so focused on what the Joker's doing and the fact that he's wearing a nurse's outfit. And he's just such a, that performance by Heath Ledger is as good as any performance on screen I've ever seen.
And I love when they're in the interrogation room, you first get it, the Joker and Gordon, just these two very different personalities. And then Gordon's about to leave, and the Joker makes the joke about good cop, bad cop routine. and Batman appears behind him. And then you get this iconic scene between them sitting at a table, having a conversation. Batman and the Joker. It's one of the best, I think, in cinema history.
When Batman's rushing to go save Harvey, it turns out, and he's just telling the guy that he just wants his phone call. Like, just all that entire thing, how he manipulates that cop in the interrogation room is just amazing.
I still remember when Batman bursts into that room and we see that it's Harvey and not Rachel. You're just like, everyone in the theater, just the air went out of the room and you're like, oh, it was so well played. I think this comes down to also just about her performance. That should be a moment where, like, I felt really stressed and sad with what happened to Rachel, but I felt like had it been maybe a different actress, you know, tears would have been going, heartbreak would have been going, but because it was her, I was like, and the way she was going about it, that part didn't hit me as hard as it could, but still brilliantly told and well done.
Yeah, and this is kind of where I go back to the turn of Harvey Dent being a little bit easy. He's only been dating her for a handful of months. Like, not to say that you can't love somebody immediately and everything else, but I'm with you. Just, I wasn't fully convinced of their relationship.
I didn't really see the chemistry and the connection there. There's the scene where they're leaving the courtroom and Rachel's being flirty with him and she's not acting at all like Rachel from the first movie. So that kind of, I was like, you're two different Rachels. Them at dinner, I didn't see the chemistry personally. I mean, I didn't hate their relationship, but the chemistry, yeah.
Yeah, but the motorcycle we talked about earlier, and just the chase down with the Joker in the back of the 18-wheeler when he flips that 18-wheeler that they changed the word laughter to slaughter on is just gruesomely brutal. And it's incredible. Just everything that the Joker does in this movie really, really works for me. When he lights the pile of money on fire, as Alfred says,
some men just want to watch the world burn.
He's just a very convincing villain. I really wish we had gotten to see the full 3-movie trilogy of him getting to come back in that third one.
The chase scene was brilliant. When they're playing chicken with Batman on the Bat Bike, I didn't mind the Bat Bike bursting out of the car either. But when they're playing chicken, you know, Batman goes under the car and around and all that. You're just like, wow. It's just one of the best action scenes ever. And I know watching this movie, I could tell Christopher Nolan was inspired by the movie Heat with Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Val Kilmer. And if you go back and watch that movie and then watch The Dark Knight, you'll see a lot of inspiration there.
And this was the first movie that Christopher Nolan actually used IMAX cameras to film. I think there was 18 minutes from this film that was filmed. I think it was the first movie ever filmed with IMAX cameras with the intention of being shown on the full IMAX ratio. And I remember seeing it on opening day in the IMAX. It's a gorgeous film to look at.
I remember when I saw a movie in IMAX, they previewed the opening scene so that they could get people to go see it in IMAX. Just seeing that whole screen fill up with the bank heist scene and then ending with,
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
So many goosebumps. Well done, IMAX, and well done, Christopher Nolan. I think it wasn't just a gimmick. It definitely added a lot to it. How did we forget talk about the Joker's intro with the magic trick in that room full of gangster and gangster bosses?
How about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. It's gone.
Everyone had no idea what was coming, and then bam.
I love the magic trick scene, just the lack of reverence the Joker has, not only for the government, but also for just the actual organized crime. Just he's the smartest guy in the room, even though he's a little bit crazy, but don't call him that.
No, I'm not.
I can't go on enough about Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. Their score should have been nominated for an Oscar. This film should have been nominated for Best Picture, and that's why the Academy changed its rules. But going back to the ending with the ferry boat climax, you have the music. Will they or won't they blow up the other ship? Meanwhile, Batman's trying to fight the Joker. I think it is one of the best climax scenes in cinema history with those ferry boats. Every time I watch it, if you're actually watching it, you're locked in. You forget to breathe every time. I know I do.
you walk out of that movie theater and for the next half hour, you're thinking, man, what would I do in that situation?
Yeah, it's actually very thought-provoking as well. Shout out to the cinematographer and Nolan for framing a shot as well. The one where, going back to when Rachel sadly didn't make it, and you have the firemen putting out the fire, and then they kind of like tap each other and look up, and there's Batman kind of standing over the rubble. I just think this is one of the best Batman shots ever. Speaking of like shots, good on Christian Bale. That's him standing on top of the Sears Tower looking down on Gotham City. The Sears Tower, one of the tallest buildings in the world. Woo! So much greatness there. Was there a lot, maybe some greatness to end the trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises? IMDb fans have it at number 71, so it's in the top 100. I don't personally agree with that. If you want to put it in the top 250, I'll hear arguments for top 250. But top 100, it did not make my cut and wasn't the greatest when I first saw it. It has gotten better over time. Maybe one day I'll see what everybody else sees. But for me, it's not in my top 3 of Batman movies.
I think this one was a little more interested in being social commentary than it was being a Batman movie. And for a Batman trilogy, I want a little bit more Batman. I did take notice this last time that I watched it. Batman himself does not show up on screen until 46 minutes and 12 seconds into what is almost 3-hour movie. Just
really?
Not enough Batman for me.
So the bat suit. So
Batman.
Wow. Okay.
Batman. And you spend the first half hour with a bit of what I would consider a forced Catwoman storyline. I don't think Selina Kyle's character was really worth it for me. Anne Hathaway, you don't have to do a lot of twisting my arms to include Anne Hathaway in many things. I just don't think the character of Selina Kyle really worked. I don't think Bruce Wayne, I don't know. They kind of explain why she was trying to get Bruce Wayne's fingerprints. I mean, they don't kind of explain it. They definitely explain it. I think it's a little bit flimsy. You do get Ben Mendelsohn in this movie for the first movie that I remember Ben Mendelsohn being in. So he does a pretty good job as one of the dirty board members there. I just overall, Catwoman has a lot to do until she doesn't, and then she has a lot to do again. I just don't like Selina Kyle coming and going from the story.
Anne Hathaway is an amazing actress. I love her. When she was first brought up to be Catwoman, I was like, all right, I'm good with that. Although, Michelle Pfeiffer, if you're listening, well, thank you for listening. But if you are listening, you're still my Catwoman. But Anne Hathaway, I felt like she did a very good job. Was her character, like you said, was it absolutely needed? I'm glad she was in there, but why she was in there, I felt like the development wasn't there.
Without her, I don't know how you tell the story that they told. Like, she's pretty integral to the story. It just never really worked for me. I mean, this movie's been out long enough, so if you haven't seen it and you're still listening to this episode, thank you. But I'm a small spoiler for the end of the movie. I don't think Bruce Wayne would have ended up with Selina Kyle.
Speaking of Selina and would they or wouldn't they, Bruce and her, I agree with that. I don't know if those two clicked. Now, Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, oh my gosh, that ending, you totally could see them both walking away from it. I could see it easily. This one, I'm with you. I don't know if I was quite sold on their romance.
Him sacrificing himself for the good of the city, I think, was a really cool way to end it. Now, if we can ever come back to the Christopher Nolan, Gotham City, Christian Bale Batman later on in life, and this being the way that happens, maybe I'll eat my words, but I just think taking away that ultimate sacrifice, I didn't really like it as much with her as a part of it. I think it's fun that they didn't kill off Batman and that Alfred gets his happy ending.
Yeah.
But speaking of a character that just was so underrepresented in this movie, just when they get Alfred to leave and actually Alfred never comes back as the hero really, really bothered me. He just abandoned Bruce Wayne, and I know he gave reasons for it, but I really would have loved to see Alfred come back and kind of play hero and say, I told you so, and help kind of save the city. But the fact that we never see Alfred again till the very end, I didn't really like that.
Alfred didn't leave. Bruce made him go. When he found out about the letter and all that, Bruce essentially broke up with him and said, you're fired, go. Alfred went about his way, but it was more Bruce being upset. And obviously he forgave Alfred there at the end, but yeah, it was Bruce who gave him the boot. Talking about some of the new cast, besides Anne Hathaway, we got Marion Cotillard. I really hope I didn't butcher her name. I'm so sorry if I did. You might remember her from the movie Inception. And then you also have Tom Hardy. You may remember him if your spidey senses are tingling from Venom. I personally liked Tom Hardy's interpretation of Bane. I liked it a lot more than the one we got in Batman and Robin. So I was good with that. And then Miriam, I think she's an amazingly talented actress. Like I said, watch her in Inception. Her deceiving performance in this film is just one of the definite highlights.
I think Christopher Nolan got a little bit proud of himself might not be the right way, but just trying to throw the audience off the scent a little bit. You definitely didn't see it coming that she was actually the ultimate bad guy. But what I didn't like is Bane was such a capable villain throughout the movie until she's then revealed, and then Bane becomes very incapable. Bane completely changes once she kind of shows that she's the mastermind of the whole thing.
Agreed. Yeah, like you see Bane controlling and running the city, and then just all of a sudden shuts down with her. So I totally see that.
I will say the only other thing I don't like about the character of Bane is the way that he sounds like he's always front and center of the screen. I don't know why the voice of Bane always has to carry like it's almost a narration more than it is the character on screen talking. I know he's got the mask over his face, but I don't enjoy seeing a character 20 feet from the front of the screen, and it sounds like he's standing right in front of me.
I know there was a lot of thought and development that went into that ever since the previews premiered, and there was a lot of feedback on that. I agree. I don't think they perfectly nailed the Bane voice.
The villain himself, he's very, very frightening. This movie, I think for me, talking about it being a little more social commentary and a little less Batman, it's a little bit too real world scary for me, which is why it didn't really age super well for me. I think that's part of it. It's a really frightening film, and Bane is front and center to that fear.
I mean, and we get that Batman versus Bane fight.
He says he's just, I'm going to break you. Yeah.
You get to see Batman not having the upper hand from start to finish. He got his butt kicked and his back broken, but not permanently broken. Question mark?
Yeah, when he gets it straightened out in that prison, that was okay. Pretty interesting.
We got to talk about that. Am I the only one who somehow they sneak him out of a city that's under terrorist control? He's in this prison, learns a lot about himself, gets his back fixed, and escapes, and somehow gets back into this no longer in control city. There's just so many head scratchers about that. Like, how did he get out? How did he get back in? Okay, well, he's Batman. You really don't think he can sneak back into the city? And I'm just like, well, I would hope the government has really good control over a city that's taken over hostage, but okay. And then the whole back fixing, I'm like, all right, so it's just a guy with a strap who fixed his back?
The thing of it, honestly, like, I'm okay with most of that. My thing is when Commissioner Gordon is banished out to walk that thing of the ice and he lights the flare and the bat signal on the bridge. It doesn't look anything like a bat. It's just a big giant flame. I wanted it to look more like a bat. But seeing Scarecrow come back and actually be the one that runs the sentencing court and banishes everybody, I think that's kind of a fun callback to the original trilogy as well. But Commissioner Gordon in general, when we talk about gripes from this film, I have two more. And the first is Commissioner Gordon being banished to a hospital bed for most of the film. Either A, Bane wanted him dead and he wouldn't have let him stay in a hospital bed, or B, why wasn't he a little more hidden? And two, I do not enjoy the whole Joseph Gordon-Levitt character as the Robin Easter egg. I didn't like that. I didn't need that.
Yeah, I will admit, I feel like Gary Oldman wasn't used to the fullest in this movie. Brilliant Oscar-winning actor, and I'm not sure why he would want to carry that note with him. Oh, well, it's been on his mind, and he just wants to be set free of the guilt. okay, well, obviously it didn't work out, him carrying that note, because it created more havoc.
But the city turns on Commissioner Gordon way too easily just because of that note too. Like I wasn't able to connect A with B on that one.
I'm with you there. I feel like they turned on him so easily. I did like that scene. I think it was well acted between Christian Bale and Gary Oldman when they're in the hospital. Of course, Christian Bale has a mask on, and it's all kind of interesting. I guess it was a throwback to the first time they met in Batman Begins. But anyways, I like that scene. But overall, Gary Oldman was underutilized. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I was good with his character. I remember, I think, when the lady goes, "You should go by your middle name, Robin." I was like, okay, that's how you're going to do it. All right, fine. I did like the ending with him like rising up in the Batcave. I thought cinematically that was a cool shot, but it was kind of forced, felt rushed. So I wasn't too big on that.
I just don't think his character without the Robin call out was ever really necessary. I think everything that he did, Commissioner Gordon could have done, not from a hospital bed. I think if they weren't trying to force the Robin thing, I don't think that character was really necessary at all, other than telling Bruce Wayne, hey, your foundation has stopped funding the orphanage. I think that's really the only point that his character served for me for the most part. And that's nothing against him. I think he did a good job. I just think that character just didn't really fit.
You know what? I'm with you on there. Now that I think about it, if there was a version without him, I think it still could have easily worked. Bryan, tell me if I'm wrong on this. Now, the opening scene to The Dark Knight with the bank robbery, epic, huge. The opening scene for The Dark Knight Rises with the plane, I don't think we needed it. Was it cool? Yeah, epic. Great action scene. Oh my God, I would have loved to have seen how they filmed it all. Did we need it? I felt like they went big, but it wasn't necessary to have the whole plane being hijacked, I guess, to show just how capable Bane is.
I think showing Bane's capability and the cult following that he has, where that one guy is just willing to completely sacrifice himself. But all it did is tie up a loose end from the story of, this is why we thought the nuclear physicist was dead, and really the nuclear physicist is here because we planted a body with his blood in it. Like, yeah, it was not super necessary. Cool to watch, but not super necessary.
That's just it. You literally could have just said, "Oh yeah, we killed the guy. Or the guy's dead." You know, it's like, well, one-liner. I don't know if we needed it. Was it cool? Yeah, but when you think about it, you go, was it necessary?
Yeah, but I mean, watching a plane get suspended from midair and then having its wings ripped off was, I mean, it's kind of a cool spectacle.
And I know I mentioned this earlier with the movie scores. I was sad that James Newton Howard wasn't involved in this one. He said he didn't think it was necessary. Might have even felt like a third wheel with just the great relationship that Hans Zimmer has with Nolan. I think we did miss some of his lighter themes, like he did the Harvey Dent theme. So I think we missed him a little bit on that. So the music nerd in me was disappointed about that. But this isn't a something that irks me. This is something that frustrates me. To that officer character who decides to shoot Batman's little like pulse gun, because of you, everything came crashing down. If you didn't shoot Batman's gun, he could have neutralized the computer that Bane had. Bane would have never bankrupted Bruce, and things could have been resolved a lot better. But because of you, you ruined so much, Mr. Officer. Bryan, I feel like we can't not talk about the football stadium scene.
Just watching the entire city crumble in that football field. Hines, that's got to be a cool thing for Hines Ward to look back on from his football career, of getting to outrun that entire thing. I know Christopher Nolan's a big Steelers fan, so that was the stadium and all that kind of stuff. The football scene and just that speech he gives, just it's very, very frightening.
But now martial law is in effect. Return to your homes. Hold your families close. And wait.
You've never seen anything like it, and I think that's what made the scene so great. Well, that's all we have on the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. But if you're interested in Batman history and you want to check out a Hulu documentary, I highly recommend Batman and Bill. It takes a very deep dive into the history, how Bill Finger co-created Batman with Bob Kane. And sadly, he did not get to enjoy the heights of Batman because Bob Kane took most all of the credit. So check it out. It is a very interesting documentary, one that will change how you look at Bob Kane and Batman. That concludes our episode on the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. We hope you enjoyed taking this trip to Gotham City with us. We know we enjoyed flashing the bat signal for it. Next week on UWF, the Misfits of the Universe, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
What's that? He says, welcome to the frickin' Guardians of the Galaxy. Only he didn't use frickin'.
For those listeners with any comments or questions, drop us a line so we can reply. Bryan, tell our listeners how they can message the show and stay up to date on everything UWF.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on Instagram at United We Fan Podcast, or you can shoot us an email at unitedwefanpodcast@gmail.com.
And also check out the artwork on there. Bryan works really hard on it, so give it some love in. I know he'd appreciate it. We'd all appreciate it. It's very good stuff. To Unite Again fans, don't forget what Alfred's thoughts are on push-ups. What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?
What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.